Welcome to Massive Beers. My name is Matt. We do the beer stuff here. Collab hopeful goodness in the form of Oakflower Brewing and Wild Fern Brewing. This be their forest floor. I'll explain why I'm laughing in a second. It's a 7.1% rye IPA. You don't see a ton of rye IPAs. Typically when you see rye IPAs, more often than not, they're either from like old school or homebrew turned pro brewer kind of small breweries or OG breweries. You know, you get rye IPAs from likes of Sierra Nevada, stuff like that. So to see two relatively new brewery, Oakflower only been around, I think, a couple years now. Wild Fern is not a year in yet. Then they do a collab, rye IPA. I'm here for it. This was canned. I think they put the canning date on here. Did they kind of stamp it or something? I forget. Anyway, it's not super old. It's not hyper fresh, but it's not super old. Let's put it that way. I think we're talking about in the middle of February right now. We're probably a month and a half, maybe, on it. So we'll see what's what. Nothing else on the can. Yeah. Why did I laugh? So whenever I hear the word forest floor, I absolutely get gobsmacked with memories of Patton Oswalt. If you want to laugh your ass off, type in Patton Oswalt Carvel ice cream cake bit. It's probably from, I want to say, the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. But he just talks, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but he talks about something crawling on the forest floor. And in Tom Carvel's voice, if you're not from the Eastern Seaboard, you don't even know what that is. But it's hilarious. I implore you to go check it out. But then you can pause and go check it out and just come back for this one. Fruits abound from a distance, mind you. Label-wise, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm like gung-ho about what Oakflower does for their... Yeah, I forgot the name of the brewery. Does for their art design. It is this over and over with this circle and then kind of like watercolor paintings. But they're very distinct. So I'm here. It's a choice. Maybe not my favorite choice, but I don't hate on their cans. Let's put it this way: I love them as a brewery. When I see their cans from a distance, I know it's them, so that makes me happy. It's kind of what you'd expect from a rye IPA. You know, rye IPAs typically do skew a bit darker. You told me this is a base hazy IPA. I would say it's a little darker. What would it be? But rye IPA tends to come off a bit darker, so that's kind of spot on what you'd expect. Pinky finger, barely off-white kind of head on it, and a rich kind of orange core. So it looks a part of a hazy IPA, more specifically a hazy rye IPA. It's good nose. Okay. Man, that smells really good. It's like it is a spot for spot on the nose kind of mixture of what you'd expect to get from a rye hazy IPA, and then it's oranges abound, citrus abounds here, very much almost like Orange Julius like, but there is this little bit of spiciness, this little bit of pepperiness, this was a bit of ryeness on it that you typically don't see in a hazy IPA, so it kind of like throws you off a little bit, but it's very much kind of on the nose. It's almost at a point where it's actually kind of boring in the sense that you're like, it's a hazy rye IPA. You know what this smells like? A hazy rye IPA. I know it sounds kind of like, okay, no shit, Sherlock, give us something more. But they're giving you exactly what's on the label in a good way. You know, it doesn't smell like an oxidized IPA. It doesn't smell like a poopy hazy IPA. It doesn't smell like a weird rye IPA. It smells like a well-done hazy rye IPA. Sorry, I don't have more for you. So yeah, citrus on citrus on citrus. Orange leaning away. Maybe a touch of like, I feel like a little, it's not lactose, but it's a confectionery thing, so it's probably a heavy oat addition, something along those lines. That kind of thing on top of that orange. That little bit of spicy rye. By spicy, I mean, you know, it to me, rye comes off as like, almost like it's not like a pink peppercorny, but there's this spice, right? You know, the best way I can explain rye to people is this little elevated spice. It's not necessarily peppery, but it's the best way I can put it. It's not like... It's not like caraway rye either. It's very much kind of just like, there you go. Lack of descriptors. It's like rye. Use the word in the definition. Let's just dive into the taste. Cheers, y'all. Okay. This is going to be the most boring review I think I've ever done, because I'm just going to keep regurgitating the same things that I've said and the same things that are on the label. It's a really well done hazy rye IPA. I'm sorry. It's like, and that's what it is. And it's like, it shouldn't be, I shouldn't diminish it or kind of trivialize it. Like, it is what it is. It's a really good version of what that is. It's actually might be the best version of that I've ever had. I'm not going to sit here and say I've had a plethora. There's a word for you. Of hazy rye IPAs. I've had a few. I don't know if I've had one really kind of do me proper as well as this one. Usually a little bit too, not much rye there, a little bit too rye heavy. People, it's kind of a weird style, so maybe not the best breweries kind of dive into this kind of style. But man, it's really well done. That citrus, like I said, follows through from the nose to the taste. Mouth feels absolutely beautiful. It's got this silky softness to it. It's semi-turbid without being heavy, so it's drinkable. And it just gives you all the things I think you'd want from a citrus-based, from an orange-based kind of hazy. When you topple in that kind of spiciness of that rye, I think it brings a couple things to the table. I think it brings a little bit of a malt grain element that's a little bit heftier than you'd expect for a hazy IPA, but not too heavy-handed to where it overpowers the beer. And then you throw in that a la cryptic, spicy, peppery component that you get from a rye graininess. It adds a little bit of pizzazz. Do we want to go with that fancy word? A little zip that you typically, I would say most people would typically associate with hop presence. When you're talking about really well done hazies, more often than not, especially hyper fresh ones, you can get a bit of hop burn. You can get a little bit of hop pellet green. You can get those kind of things, that zestiness, the zippiness, that of the hop. I think you're getting a touch of that from the hops, but I think it's being accentuated and just elevated by that rye. And that's probably the coolest part about the beer, is that all the elements are here to make a really well done beer, hazy or otherwise. But just like new cars or crazy pastry stouts or whatever you want to call it, the more moving parts, the more they can go wrong. And I think this is a beer in different hands. I think it could go wrong. I think it can go wrong really, really, really quickly. I think, it's just more, it could still be a tasty beverage, but I think it could just be a hazy IPA that happens to have rye in it, but you can't really sense it. Or I think, the rye could be overpowering. I think there's so many there's enough moving parts in this that it can get a little bit out in left field, or a little bit too disjointed is probably the best way I could put it, than being a really, really well done beer. And that's not the case here. Everything works in concert. The base haziness of the hazies, the base being a hazy IPA, mixing into those kind of, I'm trying to be funny, by the way, that rye grain as an added element, neither distracts nor disappears in the beer. It's equal parts billing. It's like what do they call it? An ensemble cast in a show. Sometimes they say that, but there's like one or two leads and everybody else is just like second fiddle or third fiddle, fourth fiddle. The rye's here. It's part of the start of the show, but it's not overshadowing or overshining anything else. And I think that's a really cool trick, and I think it's a really cool way to make a beer. And I actually, one of the reasons why I dig Autodidact, sorry. I just reviewed a collab between Oakflower and Autodidact, so I got them mixed up my brain. Apologies. Oakflower is that they do so many different styles and they do them so well. It just shows, just because you're a new brewery doesn't mean you can't be a little bit kooky, do fun things. And the fact that they came up with Wild Fern, who's, ultra new kid in the block, one of the closer, newer breweries to me, like they're weird, as the crow flies, they're very close, but they're just kind of like on the Delaware, kind of middle of nowhere kind of thing. It's fun. It's fun to see new breweries doing fun things together. And this is definitely a winner for me. Glad I picked it up. So let's talk about it. It's one of the better hazy IPAs I've had as of late. If we just make it blanket that, yes, in the conversation. It's about Rushmore status, no, but there's a lot of competition there. Is it one of the better hazy rye IPAs? It's a little unfair to do it that way too, because then it automatically defaults to the top. I can't name off the top of my head 4 rye hazy IPAs I've had in my lifetime. I had more, but I can't name it, so it would default to Mount Rushmore status. Is it one of the more interesting hazy IPAs I've had? It's like, yes. And that, my friends, that's what it's all about. Interesting and tasty. Value and availability. I pay a premium for their stuff. They don't really find their way out my way all that much, but I can get them in a couple different shops. So I want to say I paid probably. Actually, I think I paid a decent price for this. Like, typically they're pushing $20. I want to say I paid closer to 15 for this. If that's the case, I think I won on that one. And leave you with, if you like what we like this. If you like hazy IPA and you're not afraid of a little bit of a curveball, a little bit of a knuckleball, thrown in there. If you'd like rye as a grain, and you just like new breweries doing fun things together, collabs and all that fun stuff, you will dig this. So there you go. Review in the books. Hopefully you enjoyed. Massive Beers, if you want to check me out doing the social media stuff, Beer Massive podcasting stuff. Yeah. Oakflower. Wild Fern. Have you been to the breweries? Have you had their beers? If you haven't, please search them out, specifically if you're in northern/western New Jersey. Have you had this beer? All that fun stuff down there. Hopefully you enjoyed the review. Hopefully you're enjoying a little bit of a collab rye goodness right now. Hope to see you next time. Cheers, y'all.